Everything you believe about money was decided before you were old enough to question it, and it's been making your financial decisions ever since. You can learn every budgeting strategy, read every personal finance book, follow every investment tip, and still find yourself sabotaging your own financial life, overspending when you swore you wouldn't, freezing when an opportunity shows up, working twice as hard as everyone around you, and somehow ending up with less. If any of that sounds familiar, the explanation isn't hiding in your bank account. It's hiding in something that happened long before you ever held a dollar in your hand. In this video, we're going to look at something most financial content completely ignores: the psychological connection between what you experienced as a child and how you relate to money as an adult. Not as a way to blame your past, but as a way to finally understand a pattern that's been running underneath your decisions for years, often without you ever noticing it was there. Here's something developmental psychology has known for decades. Children do not learn about money by being taught about it. They absorb it, the way you absorb a language when you're surrounded by it before you can even read. Before you ever understood what a mortgage was, you already knew whether money in your house meant safety or danger. You knew whether asking for things resulted in warmth or tension. You knew whether there was always enough, never enough, or unpredictably enough, which is actually the hardest one of all. Psychologists call the emotional environment we grew up in our attachment context, and that context doesn't just shape how we feel about people, it shapes how we feel about resources, safety, scarcity, worthiness, enoughness. All of it gets wired in during a window of development when the brain is essentially recording everything it experiences as permanent truth, not as "this is how my family was," as "this is how the world is." Research in schema therapy, attachment theory, and behavioral economics points to 5 core childhood experiences that most commonly show up later as money anxiety, financial self-sabotage, or chronic financial stress in adults. You might recognize one. You might recognize all 5. The first wound is chronic scarcity. Growing up in a household where money was genuinely, consistently not enough. Not dramatic poverty necessarily, but the persistent low-level hum of financial stress. Conversations that stopped when you walked into the room. Being told we can't afford that so often that you stopped asking. Learning early that wanting things was itself a problem. The adult pattern this creates is what psychologists call a scarcity mindset, but it goes deeper than thinking poor. People who grew up in chronic scarcity often experience a physical anxiety response when their bank account drops below a certain number, even if they're objectively fine. Or they hoard money compulsively, unable to spend even on necessities because spending feels like walking toward danger. Or, and this is the counterintuitive one, they spend impulsively because the unconscious logic is, money disappears anyway, so I might as well get something from it while I can. The second wound is harder to name because it doesn't look like poverty from the outside. It's financial chaos, households where money swung wildly between abundance and crisis, a parent who made good money but lost it regularly, periods of comfort followed by abrupt crashes, celebration one month, collection calls the next. For a child, this is in some ways more psychologically destabilizing than consistent scarcity because there's no pattern to adapt to. Adults who grew up in financial chaos often develop what therapists describe as a dysregulated relationship with money, meaning their emotional responses to financial situations are consistently out of proportion to the actual event. A minor, unexpected expense feels catastrophic. A good financial month triggers suspicion rather than relief because somewhere in the nervous system, good times became associated with the crash that was coming. This is not pessimism. This is a nervous system that learned that stability cannot be trusted. The third wound is subtler and arguably the most common of all 5. It happens in households where money and love became entangled, where gifts were used as apologies, where financial provision was how affection was expressed, because emotional expression felt unsafe or unfamiliar, or where a child's worth, their sense of being loved, valued, accepted, was somehow tied to how well they performed financially, academically, or professionally. The adult pattern here is one of the most painful, a compulsive drive to earn money not as a tool for living, but as a way of feeling worthy of love. People with this wound often work themselves past exhaustion, not because they're ambitious, but because rest feels like worthlessness. They struggle to receive money graciously, to charge what they're worth, or to feel done regardless of how much they earn. Because the unconscious target isn't a number, it's a feeling of being enough, and that feeling always moves just out of reach. The fourth wound is financial shame, and it runs in two very different directions. The first is the shame of not having enough, of wearing the wrong shoes, of not being able to go on the school trip, of the heat being turned off, or the car being repossessed, or the silence at the lunch table when you had nothing to eat. That kind of shame doesn't stay in childhood. It hardens into a deep, often unconscious belief that financial struggle is a moral failure, that being broke means something is wrong with you, not just with your circumstances, but shame also runs the other direction, the shame of having money in a family or community where money meant thinking you're better than us. People who grew up with this wound often unconsciously self-limit their income, turn down opportunities, or give money away compulsively, not from generosity, but from a deep fear that financial success will cost them belonging. Both directions of financial shame arrive at the same place, a self-sabotaging relationship with money that has nothing to do with financial literacy. The fifth wound is the quietest one, and it's probably the most widespread in middle-class households. Financial silence. Money was simply never discussed, not because things were bad, but because talking about money was considered impolite, private, or inappropriate. Numbers were hidden. Salaries were secret. Bills were handled behind closed doors. Children were protected from financial reality until they were suddenly adults inside it, completely unprepared. The adults who grew up in financially silent households often have a very specific anxiety. They feel paralyzed by financial decisions, not because they lack intelligence, but because money was never a space where they were allowed to think out loud. It was always handled by someone else. There's also a particular flavor of imposter syndrome that comes with this wound, a persistent sense that everyone else somehow knows how this works, and you're the only one who missed the class. Here's the part that makes all of this particularly difficult to work with. None of these patterns feel like childhood wounds when you're living inside them as an adult. They feel like personality. They feel like how you are with money. They feel like rational responses to real risks, because in many ways, they once were. The scarcity mindset made sense when there actually was scarcity. The hypervigilance made sense when chaos was real. The compulsive earning made sense when love actually did feel conditional. The nervous system isn't broken. It built a very effective system for the environment it was in. The problem is that the environment changed, and the system didn't get the update. So now the response that once protected you is running in a context where it no longer fits, quietly shaping decisions, reactions, and limits that feel like just the way you are. And this is exactly what makes psychological awareness so powerful in this context, not as a way to excavate every childhood memory, but as a way to pause and ask, is this response mine? Or is this the 6-year-old version of me reacting to a threat that no longer exists? A crucial thing to say here, recognizing a childhood wound doesn't automatically heal it. That's not how psychology works, and any content that tells you otherwise is selling something. What awareness does do is create a gap, and that gap is everything. Because right now, for most people, the sequence goes trigger, emotional reaction, financial decision. All three happen so fast they feel like one event. The anxiety shows up, and the decision is already made, awareness inserts a pause between the reaction and the decision. It doesn't remove the anxiety, but it gives you the option to respond to your actual situation rather than to the emotional echo of something that happened when you were 8 years old. That's not a small thing. Most of the financial decisions that people most regret, the impulsive spending, the paralysis, the self-limiting, the compulsive earning that leaves no room for life, happen inside that gap or where the gap used to be. There are also practical entry points beyond therapy that research supports. Journaling specifically about your earliest money memories, not to analyze them, but simply to make them visible. Noticing the physical sensations that show up in your body during financial stress, tightness in the chest, shallow breathing, the urge to close your eyes, and recognizing that those sensations often belong to a much younger version of you than the one currently handling the situation, and perhaps most importantly, learning to distinguish between what you genuinely want financially and what you feel you need to do to be safe, loved, or acceptable, because for people with early money wounds, those categories got fused a long time ago. Jung believed that the parts of ourselves we hide most carefully, the parts we judge, suppress, or never examine, have more influence over our lives than anything we consciously choose. The financial patterns we've talked about today aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of a mind that adapted, survived, and learned in a context that no longer exists. Bringing them into the light doesn't mean reliving the past. It means stopping the past from silently writing your financial future. The next video on this channel goes directly into the concept of the shadow itself, the specific part of the unconscious mind that stores the traits, fears, and wounds we've decided we're not allowed to have. If today's video landed somewhere uncomfortable, that's probably a good sign. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the shadow.